who dared to chain her.
Chapter 1. How did I find myself in this position again? I pulled at the chain, metal biting into my wrists as I tried to free myself. It didn't budge. I lifted my head and looked at the faces surrounding me, accusatory, furious, unrecognizable. They were supposed to be my pack, my family. After my parents were killed by the rival pack's alpha and Shadow Sting stood on the brink of being overtaken, it had been me who stepped forward. Me who fought. Me who made the choices no one else would. I had protected them. I had stopped them from being ruled by a tyrant. I had personally set a trap for the tyrant and taken my revenge. And yet, here they were, pointing fingers, shouting, condemning. They claimed I was dangerous. That power clung to me too closely. That I had changed. That I was no longer one of them. Some said I had become a weapon. Others whispered that I belonged to the Alpha King now more than I ever belonged to Shadow Sting. That I had traded loyalty for a crown and blood for favor. I searched their faces for understanding, for gratitude, for memory. I found none. Fear had replaced loyalty. Rumors had replaced truth. And once again, the pack was desperate for someone to blame. My fingers tightened around the chain, not in panic, but in disbelief. I had survived dungeons, betrayal, war. I had survived monsters. I had not expected to survive my own pack. I closed my eyes, hoping, praying to the moon goddess that the message I had sent had been received. Then I heard the voice, and I knew she had answered.
Who dared chain her?
The words boomed across the clearing, heavy with authority and fury. I didn't need to look to know who it was. King Erwin, the ruthless king everyone feared, the king no one loved. They hated him. Stories followed him like shadows, rumors that he delighted in torture, that cruelty came easily to him, that he ruled through blood and terror alone. An evil king, they whispered, a monster in a crown. But I knew the truth. The moment his voice reached them, the pack fell silent. Some shrank back in fear. Others whispered urgently among themselves.
See?
Someone hissed.
I told you she was a traitor. She has the crown on her side.
Before anyone could move, Erwin was there. He tore the chain from my wrists as if it were nothing, metal snapping apart under his grip. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply looked at them, and they cowered. He said nothing more. Instead, he scooped me into his arms as though I weighed nothing at all. As he turned away, he leaned down and murmured against my ear, his voice in a low growl, but gentle and familiar.
How many times am I going to have to save you, my little weapon?
I smiled slightly as I remembered how this all began. A year ago, I had been captured by the rival Alpha Davian, the one who killed my parents, had dragged me from my lands and thrown me into his dungeon. He wanted Shadow Sting, and without my parents, I was the only thing standing in his way. He thought marriage to his son would secure my pack's loyalty and give him control without another war. I refused. That was when the torture started. Not mindless violence, not rage. It was deliberate. Enough pain to weaken me, enough recovery time to keep me alive. Broken bones that were set only so they could be broken again. Cuts that healed just enough to hurt more the next time. He wanted me exhausted, hoping I would eventually agree. I never did. So he chose to make an example of me, a public execution. He wanted my pack to see me kneel and die so they would stop resisting and accept his rule. He wanted my death to erase any doubt. That was the day King Erwin arrived. I had begged him, not for mercy, but for purpose. I told him I would do whatever he needed if he saved me. I offered myself as his weapon because I had nothing left to lose. What I didn't know then was that Erwin had his own reasons for wanting that Alpha dead. So we worked together. We planned carefully. We waited. We let our enemy believe he was winning. When he finally moved, we destroyed him completely. But my pack never saw that part. They saw me standing beside the Alpha King. They saw my proximity to the crown and decided it meant betrayal. They forgot the dungeon, forgot the chains, forgot who had kept them from being ruled by a tyrant. They said I had chosen Erowyn over them. Today, they decided to punish me for it. That was when Erowyn's voice cut through the clearing. I was pulled back to the present as sunlight hit my face. He lifted me without hesitation and carried me out of their grasp. No discussion, no warning. Unlike last year, he refused the carriage. He set me on his horse instead and mounted behind me, one arm firm around my waist. Not gentle, not rough, certain. As the horse carried us away, I understood it clearly. That pack was no longer my home, and it hadn't been for a long while. Chapter 2. The ride to the castle was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. Erowyn sat behind me on the horse like a wall. One hand on my waist, the other holding the reins, his body steady even when the path turned rough. I could feel the heat of him through my thin clothes. I could also feel how alert he was, like he expected an arrow any second. Like silence didn't mean safety, it only meant waiting. My wrists still burned where the chains had been. My pack's faces kept flashing in my mind, people I had bled for, people I had protected, people who had once called me Alpha's daughter with pride. Today they had called me traitor like it was easy, like my parents' blood had never mattered, like my pain was a story they were tired of hearing. As the horse moved, the truth settled in me clearly. I didn't belong in that pack anymore. I hadn't for a long while. I kept my eyes forward. I refused to cry. Erowyn spoke once and only once, when I shifted too stiffly in the saddle.
Hold yourself up.
I am, I snapped, then immediately regretted it. He didn't react. He just said,
Good.
that was all. When the castle came into view, my stomach tightened. The black stone walls rose out of the mountains like something built to survive everything. Even time, even hate. No banners, no warmth. The same place that had felt like a prison and a shelter at the same time. The gates opened, guards bowed. No one looked directly at Erowyn for long. They moved fast, like they were trained to never make him wait. We rode into the courtyard and stopped. The moment Erowyn swung down, servants rushed forward, but none came too close. He lifted me down like I weighed nothing. Not gently, not rough, just efficient. Like moving a weapon from one place to another. I expected him to send me back to the East Wing. The part of the castle that was cold and stiff and watched. The part where people did not smile. The part where I had been kept away from him. But Erowyn didn't turn that direction. He walked toward the inner doors that led to the West Wing. I slowed automatically, confused. Where are we going? He didn't look at me.
Inside.
That's not an answer. He finally glanced at me, his expression flat.
Do you want to stand in the courtyard and argue? Or do you want to stop looking like you've been dragged through mud?
I clenched my jaw and followed. The moment we crossed into the West Wing, it felt different. Warmer. The air wasn't sharp with cold stone. Torches burned brighter. Rugs softened the sound of boots. The walls weren't bare. There were paintings, tapestries, carved wooden tables with bowls of herbs that actually smelled good. And the people, the servants moved like they weren't afraid of being hit for breathing wrong. A guard near a doorway smiled at another guard like they were normal men, not soldiers waiting for punishment. Someone laughed quietly down the hall. It made my skin prickle. This was the side of the palace Mona had mentioned, the side that didn't feel like it was holding its breath. Erowyn kept walking like he didn't care that I was stunned, like bringing me here meant nothing. Then a voice cut through the hallway.
My girl!
Mona appeared so fast I almost stepped back. She grabbed me and pulled me into her arms, pressing my head against her shoulder like she'd been waiting. Her hands moved over my back, my arms, like she was checking that I was real and still in one piece.
Look at you.
She muttered, half angry, half relieved.
Look at your face!
Behind her stood Sina, hands twisted together, eyes wide. She didn't rush me like Mona did, but the relief on her face was obvious. She swallowed hard, and then dipped into a quick bow toward Erwin. "Your Majesty." Mona didn't bow. Mona didn't even look at him like he was a king. She looked at him like he was a stubborn boy who had done something reckless again. Erwin's jaw tightened.
Mona?
Don't Mona me!
She snapped.
You went into a pack territory alone?
I went with guards.
Guards, not the royal forces!
She shot back. Then she turned back to me and cupped my cheek.
Come, you'll eat, you'll bathe, you'll sleep.
I blinked at her. "Mona,"
Not a word.
she said, already steering me down the hallway.
Not until you're warm.
Erwin spoke behind us.
She's staying here.
I stopped so abruptly Mona almost stumbled. I turned toward him. "Here?" He stared at me like the question was irritating.
Yes.
"In the West Wing."
Yes.
My heartbeat picked up. "Why?" His eyes narrowed slightly.
Because your pack put chains on you.
"That's not—"
That's enough.
He cut in. His tone was controlled, but I could hear the edge.
You asked for help. You got it. Don't waste my patience.
I forced my mouth shut. Not because he scared me, but because I recognized the look in his eyes. The same look he'd had when he dragged Davian to trial. The look of someone who would not be pushed on certain things. Mona rubbed my arm.
He's in a mood, come.
Sina hovered close, like she was afraid I'd vanish if she blinked. We reached a room I'd never been in before. The door was carved wood, heavy and polished. Inside was a large chamber with a wide bed, thick curtains, a fireplace already lit, and a bathroom attached. It wasn't the cold guest room in the East Wing. This was lived-in comfort, quiet luxury. I stared. "This is too much." Mona snorted.
It's a room.
"It's a royal room,"
It's a room the king picked.
she corrected, like that ended the discussion. Sina moved toward the bath chamber. "I'll bring hot water," she said calmly. Mona started pulling my cloak off before I could protest.
Sit, you're shaking.
"I'm not shaking,"
You're shaking.
she repeated, and pushed me down onto a cushioned chair. I sat, my hands clenched in my lap. My eyes flicked to the doorway where Erwin still stood. He hadn't left. He was watching the entire time. Mona noticed. She walked up to him and lowered her voice.
This is going to make them talk.
Let them.
He said.
She's already been chained by her own pack. Don't make her life worse.
Erwin's gaze slid to me.
Her life is already worse. I'm correcting a problem.
"A problem," I repeated before I could stop myself. His eyes snapped back to me. The room went still. Mona paused mid-step. Sina froze near the bath chamber door. Erwin walked in slowly, stopping a few feet away from me.
Do you want me to pretend this is kindness?
He asked.
Do you want soft words so you can sleep better?
I swallowed. "No,"
Good,
he said.
because it isn't kindness. It's control.
My throat tightened, but I held his stare. Control over me?
Control over what happens to you.
He corrected.
Your pack has proven they can't be trusted with you. So now I decide where you stay.
I could feel my temper rising. "So, I'm a prisoner again." He leaned slightly closer.
You were never free. You just forgot that for several months.
The words hit hard because they were true. I forced a breath. "Why bring me to the West Wing then?" His mouth twitched like he almost didn't want to answer.
Because if someone tries to take you again, I want them to have to come through my side of the palace to do it.
Mona's expression softened in a way that made me uncomfortable. Sina looked down quickly, like she didn't want me to see her smile. Erwin straightened. The moment was gone.
You'll bathe. You'll eat. You'll rest.
"And then?" I asked.
And then,
He said, voice colder again.
We'll talk about why your pack turned on you. We'll talk about who pushed them. And we'll talk about what you're going to do next.
I held my chin up. What if I don't want your help? His eyes narrowed.
You already asked for it.
I asked because I had chains on me,
And you'll have them again
he said calmly.
if you go back there alone.
I stared at him. So you don't trust me?
No,
He said without hesitation.
I don't.
The bluntness shocked me more than an insult would have. Then he added, quieter, like he hated the words even as he said them.
But I trust the problem in front of me. I can see it. I can deal with it.
He turned toward the door. Mona stepped aside for him. Sina bowed again. Before he left, he looked over his shoulder at me.
Don't confuse a room with safety, Dinara. Safety is earned.
Then he was gone. Mona released a breath like she'd been holding it the entire time.
All right,
She said briskly, clapping once.
let's get you cleaned up and then we can catch up.
I didn't move. My mind kept replaying his words. I don't trust you. It should have made me angry. It did, a little. But it also felt honest. Chapter 3. I woke up the next day still exhausted. Though the bed was soft, the room warm, the fire steady, my mind refused to rest. Every sound made me tense. Every shadow looked like a memory trying to crawl back into me. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow crackle of the hearth and the distant rhythm of the castle settling for the night. At some point, footsteps passed my door. Heavy. Measured. I knew without opening my eyes who it was. Erwin. He did not knock. He never did. He stopped outside my door, stood there for a moment, then continued down the hall. I turned my face into the pillow, annoyed with myself for noticing, for caring. Morning came quietly, and Sina woke me just after dawn with fresh clothes and food I barely touched. We talked as I dressed, and I told her everything that had gone on since I've been gone. Mona arrived soon after, hands on her hips, eyes sharp.
He's already awake.
She said, as if this were a personal flaw of his.
Has been since before sunrise.
Of course he has, I muttered. She studied me for a long moment.
You're not leaving this wing alone.
I wasn't planning to,
Good,
she said.
because he is planning to see you.
That made my stomach tighten. I expected a summons, a command. Instead, it came casually.
Walk with me.
Erwin didn't look at me when he said it. He was already moving, long strides eating up the hall like he assumed I would follow. I did. We passed through corridors I hadn't seen before, less decorated, more functional. Maps lined the walls. Weapons hung openly, not ceremonially. This wasn't a place for display. This was where decisions were made. He stopped at a balcony that overlooked the lower training grounds. Wolves sparred below, movements precise, disciplined. No chaos, no cruelty.
Your pack
He said without turning.
didn't turn on you overnight.
I know, I answered. I had known the moment the chains closed around my wrists. Hate like that didn't bloom on its own. It was planted, fed carefully. Someone had spoken to them when I wasn't there. Someone they trusted had whispered fear into their ears, dressed lies in pieces of truth, promised safety or survival if they turned on me first. Packs didn't betray their Luna without reason. Someone had given them one.
Someone pushed them.
Yes,
Someone they trust more than you.
that stung, but I didn't argue. Yes. He finally looked at me then. Not assessing, not cold, curious.
You didn't beg yesterday.
I've done enough of that in my life,
Good.
he said.
I don't keep beggars.
I folded my arms. But you're keeping me? His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer.
Because you're useful,
He said.
and because you're angry.
I have reason to be.
So do I.
The words landed heavier than he intended. I saw it then, The fracture he kept hidden under discipline and reputation, not weakness, restraint.
I don't trust easily.
He continued.
I watched my father die for it.
I know. That made him go still.
You know.
He repeated quietly. Mona told me. He studied me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to stop or finally say the thing he always swallowed.
She told you pieces.
He said.
Not the whole of it.
I didn't speak. I just waited.
I was a boy.
He continued.
Old enough to know what loyalty looked like. Too young to understand betrayal.
His jaw tightened.
My father trusted a man he had known for years. A man he let close to the crown. Close enough to learn the castle's weaknesses.
My stomach twisted, because I knew what happened next.
When the rogues came,
Erwin said.
That man was already inside the castle. I saw him speaking to them. I saw him guiding them through passages only the king's circle should have known.
His voice went flat.
And I saw him stand there while my father died.
I clenched my hands. You tried to tell the council.
I did.
His mouth tightened.
They said I was grieving, confused. They said I was imagining betrayal because I couldn't accept the truth.
The truth being a rogue attack, I said quietly.
A convenient story.
He agreed.
One that kept the realm calm and kept the right people protected.
My throat felt tight. Who was he? I asked. Because I knew him and his father were betrayed. But what I didn't know was who betrayed his father. Erwin didn't hesitate this time.
Alpha Draken.
The name hit hard, even though I hadn't heard it before.
Davian's father.
Erwin added, watching my face closely.
The man who wore honor like a costume.
My pulse spiked. So Davian knew.
Yes.
Erwin said.
Davian was older than me. Old enough to understand what he was doing.
His eyes darkened.
I told him what I saw. I thought he would protect me. Instead, he went to the council and told them I was unstable, that I was rambling, that I couldn't be trusted.
Cold swept through me. So this was why he hated Davian. I thought he was simply protecting his kingdom from a tyrant who killed my parents. That's why they locked you away, I whispered. Erwin nodded once.
That was when I learned what that family truly was.
I swallowed, forcing the pieces together, then said, and then years later, Davian becomes Alpha of Black Siege.
And he did what his father taught him.
Erwin said, voice controlled.
He takes what he wants and buries the truth under war and law.
My chest tightened. I said, my parents. His gaze held mine.
Your parents were not the first people he destroyed. Just the ones he needed gone.
I exhaled shakily, the anger in me turning sharp and clear. So it wasn't just my life he ruined, I said. It was yours first. Erwin's expression didn't soften, but something in him went very still.
That's why I don't trust easily,
he said quietly.
Because I watched what happens when you trust the wrong bloodline.
I nodded, voice low. And that's why you recognized Davian's lie so fast?
Yes,
he said.
Because I already lived through the first version of it.
He looked back down at the training grounds.
And now you know why I can't let this thing between us.
He gestured vaguely between us.
Mean anything yet.
I'm not asking it to, I said. That surprised him. I stepped closer to the railing, resting my hands on the cold stone. You don't trust me. Fine. I don't trust you either. His brow lifted slightly.
That's honest.
I'm not here just because I believe you're good, I continued. I'm here because you stopped them. Because you didn't let my pack kill me just to make themselves feel righteous. He studied me carefully now.
And?
He prompted. And because whatever you are, I said, meeting his gaze, you don't pretend to be something else. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke.
You'll stay.
I nodded. I figured.
You'll train.
That surprised me. Train?
You're not a weapon if you can't protect yourself.
He said bluntly.
And I won't have someone under my roof who breaks the moment pressure is applied.
Something warm sparked in my chest, pride, maybe, or defiance. When do we start? His mouth twitched.
Tomorrow, my little weapon.
He turned to leave. Erwin, I said before I could stop myself. He paused. Why the West Wing? I asked. Why bring me closer if you don't trust me? He didn't face me when he answered.
Because trust is built.
He said.
And I won't build it from across the palace.
Then he walked away. I stood there long after he was gone, watching the wolves below spar and fall and rise again. And I realized that while he may not trust me, not fully, telling me about his father and moving me to the West Wing were his way of trying. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't reassurance. It was effort. And I appreciated it more than ever. Chapter 4. Training began the next morning. I was woken before dawn by a knock that wasn't gentle and wasn't Sina's. When I opened the door, a guard stood there with a neutral expression and a single instruction.
The king expects you in the lower yard.
That was it. The lower yard was colder than the training grounds I had seen from the balcony. The stone was damp beneath my boots, the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. A handful of wolves were already there. Royal guards, disciplined and silent, stretching or checking their weapons. Erwin stood at the center of it all. He wore no crown, no ceremonial armor, just dark leathers fitted for movement, sleeves rolled back, a blade resting casually at his side. He looked like he belonged here in a way he never did on a throne.
You're late,
He said without looking at me. It's barely light, I replied.
That wasn't a defense.
He said. I stepped forward anyway. He turned then, eyes sharp, posture relaxed but ready.
Before we start,
He said.
Understand this. I'm not training you to win fights. I'm training you to survive them.
I've survived plenty, I said. He nodded once.
Not by skill.
The words stung, because they were true. He handed me a wooden practice blade. It felt unfamiliar in my grip, lighter than I expected, balanced differently than anything I'd used before.
You know how to hold it.
He said.
You don't know how to use it.
One of the guards stepped forward at Erwin's signal. Bigger than me, faster, confident in the way men who had never been powerless often were.
Attack her.
Erwin said. The guard hesitated.
Your Majesty.
Now.
The guard moved. I barely had time to react before I was on the ground, the breath knocked clean out of me. The blade skidded across the stone. Pain flared along my side where I'd landed wrong.
Up.
Erwin said calmly. I pushed myself up, jaw tight, again. This time I lasted longer, barely, long enough to block once before being disarmed and sent stumbling back, again. By the fourth time, my arms were shaking and my lungs burned. Sweat soaked into my clothes despite the cold. Erwin finally raised a hand.
Enough.
The guard stepped back immediately. Erwin approached me, gaze assessing, not unkind but not soft either.
You rely on instinct.
He said.
That works, until it doesn't.
I don't have time to think in a fight, I snapped.
That's why you lose.
He said.
Thinking should be instinct.
He adjusted my grip on the blade without asking, fingers firm, impersonal.
You don't fight like someone who believes they'll live.
The words landed harder than any blow. I looked at him sharply. You think I don't want to live?
I think.
He said evenly.
You're used to surviving for reasons outside yourself.
I didn't respond. I didn't know how. He stepped back.
We'll fix that.
Training continued like that for days. Grueling, unforgiving, precise. Erwin corrected everything. My stance, my timing, the way I anticipated instead of reacted. He didn't shout. He didn't belittle. He praised even the smallest improvement. as if acknowledging effort mattered as much as success. He expected progress, and he noticed when it came, and it did. Slowly, pain became familiar, bruises layered over older ones, my muscles aching in ways that told me I was changing, not breaking. I stopped flinching when someone rushed me. I learned how to fall without shattering, how to recover without hesitation, how to strike without second-guessing myself. Erwin watched it all, not hovering, not distant, present. There were times he sparred with me himself. I noticed quickly that he held back, not enough to insult me, but enough that I could feel the restraint. It irritated me more than if he'd knocked me flat. After the third time, I refused to spar with him again and chose his guards instead. He grumbled about it. I was sure he understood. During training, I joked with the guards. Sometimes I flirted. Light, harmless, nothing meant to linger. I noticed Erwin noticed, and without fail, whichever guard I'd laughed with would find himself sparring against the king shortly after. Hard. Soon enough, the guards started avoiding me altogether. I noticed. I didn't confront him. I found it amusing. Despite the laughter and tension, training continued. One afternoon, after a particularly brutal session, I sank onto the stone steps, breathing hard, sweat cooling against my skin. Erwin approached and handed me a folded letter without a word. He turned as if to give me privacy. "Stay," I said before I thought better of it. He paused, then turned back. I wanted him to see. Wanted him to know I wasn't hiding anything, that I had nothing to conceal. So I opened the letter and read it aloud. It asked about my well-being, about my injuries, about how I was holding up after what had happened with my pack. The concern in the words was gentle, sincere. I knew exactly who it was from. Rython, my former husband, Davian's son. The marriage had been forced, another of Davian's weapons. After his defeat, the union was declared void under coercion. Unlike his father or grandfather, Rython had never been cruel. He hadn't known the depths of Davian's actions. During the short time we were married, he listened. He cared. He became a friend I trusted deeply, and that was why I ended it. I would not trap him in a loveless bond forged by violence. Even after the divorce, he remained kind, supportive, steady. I smiled as I finished the letter. When I looked up, Erwin was still there, watching me, not guarded, not suspicious, but instead, with a look on his face that was intense, it had me stepping back. But before I could do so, he did the last thing I would have expected from him.
Chapter 5. Erwin. She wasn't reckless. That was the first thing I noticed. Most fighters who came from trauma fought wildly, as if speed alone could protect them. She didn't. She watched, measured, adjusted. When she missed, she didn't panic. When she fell, she didn't freeze. She got back up with a quiet determination that unsettled everyone who trained with her, including me. She learned faster than most soldiers I had trained, faster than some guards who had spent years in service. I corrected her stance once, maybe twice, and she never made the same mistake again. She remembered angles, distances, timing. She understood why something worked instead of memorizing how. That kind of precision didn't come from talent alone. It came from survival. Her pain tolerance confirmed it. Blows that should have drawn a reaction barely slowed her. She didn't grimace, didn't curse, didn't lash out emotionally. She absorbed pain the way someone absorbs weather. Unpleasant, but expected. Davian had done that to her. The thought made my anger resurface constantly. I had already destroyed him, dismantled his body and everything he built. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough to undo what he had taken from her. Every time I watched her train, I saw proof of what he'd done carved into her instincts. Training her should have been simple, necessary, controlled. Instead, it was torture. Not because of the effort, but because of restraint. Every instinct in me wanted to pull her back when exhaustion slowed her movements, to tell her she didn't have to prove anything anymore, to remind her that her pack's betrayal wasn't her failure, it was theirs. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to touch her. I wanted to run my hands through that unruly hair and tell her she wasn't disposable, wasn't replaceable, wasn't alone. Those thoughts were dangerous. Because every time they surfaced, my mind went back to my father, to the trust he gave freely, to the man he believed in, to the blade sliding through his heart while the man he trusted held it. Trust had cost him everything, and I had sworn never to repeat that mistake. So when she left a year ago, I was relieved. Her absence made it easier to ignore what I had begun to feel. Distance restored control. Now she was back, and control was slipping. I saw it in the way I watched her too closely, in how often I intervened when I didn't need to. Even the council began to notice, and they warned me plainly. She was a weakness. Do not repeat your father's mistake. Distance yourself. I listened, and I intended to obey, until the letter came. She could have read it privately, could have sent me away. Instead, she asked me to stay, not as a command, not as a test, as trust. She read it aloud without hesitation, no deception, no guarded pauses. She wanted me to hear it, to know she wasn't hiding anything. Even after everything, after betrayal, abandonment, and loss, she chose transparency. She trusted me. That realization hit harder than any blow I'd taken in my life. The ice I had built around myself cracked. Slowly, irreversibly. Before I could stop myself, before reason or caution could intervene, I closed the distance between us and kissed her. It wasn't planned. It wasn't measured. It was honest. And the moment it happened, I knew there was no retreating back into distance. Because I had already crossed the line I'd sworn never to approach again, and this time, I didn't know if I wanted to turn back.
Chapter 6. He kissed me. For a heartbeat, I didn't understand what was happening. I only knew that his hand was warm where it rested at my waist, and that the world seemed to narrow until there was nothing but the space between us. The kiss wasn't hesitant. It wasn't rough either. It was controlled in the way someone kisses when they've been holding back for far too long. Like he was afraid that if he let go even a little, everything he'd built to protect himself would collapse. His lips were firm, steady, unmistakably sure, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. When he finally pulled away, his forehead hovered close to mine.
I'm sorry,
He said immediately, like the word had been waiting on his tongue. I didn't care. I didn't care about restraint or walls or what he might decide tomorrow. I didn't care if this was the only moment I would ever get. All I knew was that the kiss had left something awake in me, something that had been dormant for too long. So I didn't let him retreat. I rose onto my toes, threaded my fingers into his collar, and pulled his head back down to mine. This time, I felt his surprise. His body went still for half a second, like he was deciding whether to stop me. Then he relaxed. His hands found my waist again, firmer now, grounding, like he was anchoring himself to the moment. The kiss deepened. Not frantic, not desperate, but certain. Mutual. When I finally pulled away, he didn't let go. His hands stayed where they were, holding me close enough that I could feel his breath steadying, his control reassembling piece by piece. We stood there like that, neither of us speaking, neither of us moving, as if words would break something fragile and new. Then,
Hem!
We jumped apart at the same time. Mona stood a few paces away, her hands clasped together, a beaming smile on her face like she had just witnessed the fulfillment of a prophecy. Beside her, Sina looked stunned, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if she wasn't sure whether to gasp or flee. "Oh no," I groaned quietly. Mona didn't even pretend to be subtle. She rushed forward, grabbed both my hands, and immediately began dragging me away.
Come, come,
she said briskly.
you need rest and answers, many answers.
I glanced back over my shoulder. Erwin was still standing where I'd left him, his expression unreadable, but not composed. His hands lifted slightly, like he was considering pulling me back, stopping her, saying something. Then he lowered them. Sina followed behind us, still looking shell-shocked. When we reached my room, Mona wasted no time. Questions flew at me in rapid succession, barely leaving space to breathe. I answered what I could, deflected what I couldn't, and eventually she left, satisfied enough for the moment. Sina lingered. She stood near the door, quiet as ever, then finally spoke.
I guess, she said slowly, he finally decided to trust someone.
The words stayed with me. I opened my mouth to argue, to say it was just a kiss, that Erwin could retreat tomorrow, that nothing had really changed. But Sina had already turned away. The door closed softly behind her. I sat down on the edge of the bed, heart still racing, lips still warm, and realized something I hadn't let myself consider until now. Maybe it wasn't just a kiss. Maybe it was a beginning. Even with the kiss, the training schedule never changed. Dawn came as it always did, cold and unforgiving. I leapt out of bed before Sina could wake me, heart light in a way it hadn't been in years. I told myself it was foolish to be excited, but that didn't stop me from pulling on my training clothes faster than usual, from smoothing my hair with unnecessary care. I wanted to see him. The lower yard greeted me with damp stone and biting air. Guards stood where they always did, silent and disciplined. Everything was the same. Except him. Erwin wasn't there. At first, I told myself he was late, that he'd arrive any moment with that calm, unreadable expression, as if nothing between us had changed. Minutes passed, then more. My chest tightened, then the truth settled in, heavy and sharp. He regretted it, the kiss, the moment, letting himself feel anything at all. My chest ached as training began without him. I went through the motions like a ghost, blocking too slow, striking too early, misjudging distance I had mastered days ago. I caught myself staring at the entrance more than once, half expecting him to appear and pretend nothing had happened. He didn't. Eventually, his second-in-command barked a dismissal, irritation clear in his voice.
You're unfocused! Go!
I didn't argue. All I wanted was to disappear somewhere private and fall apart quietly. But my feet slowed as I headed toward my rooms. If Mona or Sina saw my face, they'd know immediately. So I turned away. There was one place I remembered, unchanged since last year, always empty, the Royal Gardens. I slipped through the stone paths, hoping no guard thought to stop me. By the time I reached the outer hedges, my vision blurred. Hot tears slipped free, salty against my lips, my breath uneven. Then I froze. Voices, several of them. I slowed instinctively, not intending to listen, only to pass, but then I heard my name.
She's a liability.
Someone snapped.
Her presence undermines stability.
I recognized the voice immediately, one of the elder council members who had helped bring Davian down.
She's already destabilized her own pack.
Another added.
Keeping her here invites retaliation.
My stomach twisted. Then a third voice cut through them, calm, cold, unmistakable.
Then they should think carefully before making threats they cannot finish.
It was Erwin's. Silence followed. I stayed hidden, barely breathing, expecting the argument to continue. Instead, Erwin dismissed them curtly. Footsteps moved away. My mind raced. Was he leaving? Should I slip away now? I was halfway through planning an escape when his voice carried again.
You can come out now, my sweet weapon.
I froze. When I didn't move, he sighed and stepped closer. A moment later, his hand wrapped gently around my wrist and he drew me from behind the hedge. I frowned, bracing myself for anger. Instead, he smiled. Not the sharp, controlled smirk he wore in court. Not the cold curl of his mouth when issuing orders. A real smile, warm, unguarded. My mouth fell open. I had never seen him smile like that before. He was always brooding, frowning, and controlled. Never this. He reached up, brushed a small piece of wood from my hair, and smoothed it back absently. Then his expression changed.
Were you crying?
He asked. I tried to pull away, embarrassed, but he held my face firmly, forcing me to look at him.
Answer me.
I bit my lip, refusing to meet his eyes.
If you don't tell me,
He growled softly.
I won't let you go.
I knew if he kept holding me like that, I'd do something reckless. So I blurted the truth. Do you regret the kiss we had yesterday? He went still. His jaw tightened, anger flickering across his face, and my heart dropped. I turned away, desperate to leave before he said the words that would break me completely. But he stopped me. In one smooth motion, he lifted me off the ground, my legs instinctively wrapping around his hips as he pulled me close and kissed me. Hard. Certain. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine.
Does that feel like regret?
I couldn't speak. I was too stunned, too breathless as he held me there. When I didn't answer, he kissed my cheek, then my temple, then the corner of my mouth.
Answer me.
He growled. No, I croaked.
Good.
He said quietly.
I may not fully trust you yet, but don't doubt my feelings. That is something I do trust.
My heart pounded as I nodded. When you didn't show up today, I admitted. I thought you regretted it, that you were avoiding me. He cupped my cheek gently.
No, my little weapon. I was on my way here when the council stopped me.
I nodded, understanding. Then he frowned slightly.
Why were you dismissed early from training?
I couldn't focus, I admitted. His mouth curved faintly.
Were you too occupied thinking about me?
Yes, I said honestly. He blinked, then laughed. A real laugh, head thrown back, unguarded, surprised. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I laughed too, until the sound died in my throat, because I remembered the council's words. She's a liability. Chapter 7. The next morning, I was still reeling from everything that had happened with Erwin. The smile I had seen on his face, the sound of his laughter, the way he had admitted, carefully, guardedly, that he had feelings, even if trust still eluded him. It felt small and fragile, but it felt like progress, like the first crack in a wall that had never been meant to come down all at once. I dressed quickly, anticipation humming beneath my skin. Training meant seeing him. Seeing him meant yesterday had been real. Sina wasn't there when I finished tying my boots. That should have been the first warning. I stepped into the corridor and the second came immediately. Silence. Not the peaceful quiet of early morning, but the wrong kind. The kind that settled too deeply, too early. Before the bells, before the guards changed shifts, before the castle fully woke. No voices in the courtyard below. No clang of steel. No movement. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was still unfamiliar with the castle's rhythm, that my instincts were overreacting. They weren't. Years of captivity and betrayal had sharpened something inside me. It didn't soothe, it warned. By the time I reached the end of the hall, I already knew. A guard stood there, posture too rigid, too alert. His hand rested on his weapon, not casually, but ready. When his eyes met mine, they didn't soften. I turned slowly back toward my room. Too late. Another guard stepped out behind me, blocking the retreat.
Stay where you are,
He said. Cold slid down my spine. They wore the right colors, moved like they belonged, but they stood too close, watched me too carefully, like men waiting for permission rather than orders, not royal guards. I raised my hands slowly. If you're going to kill me, I said evenly, do it quickly. Even as I said it, I had no intention of letting that happen. If they thought I would go quietly, I would use that mistake. The man smiled.
No,
He said,
You're coming with us.
I didn't ask where. They moved fast. Too fast for me to shout. One wrenched my arm behind my back, pain flaring sharp enough to steal my breath. I fought anyway, not because I thought I could win, but because I would never go quietly again. I drove an elbow into one man's ribs before the other struck me across the jaw. Stars burst behind my eyes. Blood filled my mouth. Then the corridor exploded. Steel rang. Bodies hit stone. The grip on my arm vanished. I staggered, nearly fell, and was caught by a firm hand at my waist. Erwin. He steadied me, one hand solid at my back, the other briefly cupping my face.
Are you hurt?
He asked, low and controlled. Before I could answer, his attention shifted. The men were pinned to the floor now, blades pressed to their throats by his guards.
Speak,
Erwin said coldly. One of them laughed weakly.
You're already too late.
Erwin crouched, gaze level with the man's.
You came into my castle.
He said calmly.
You do not get to be cryptic.
Blood darkened the corner of the man's mouth as he laughed again.
You're already too late.
Erwin didn't react.
Explain.
The man's eyes flicked past him, briefly, before settling near my shoulder.
Shadowsting didn't turn on you because they suddenly grew brave.
He said hoarsely.
They were convinced.
My chest tightened.
Convinced of what?
Erwin asked.
That you were dangerous.
The man replied.
That staying loyal to you meant extinction. That the crown would come for them because of you.
That's a lie, I said. He huffed.
Of course it is, but it was convincing.
Erwin's eyes narrowed.
Who convinced them?
The man hesitated, not from fear, but calculation.
Someone they trusted.
He said slowly.
Someone who didn't sound like a threat.
The air felt thin.
Someone who promised peace.
He continued.
Not conquest. Someone who spoke of protecting Shadowsting from both the Crown and Black Siege.
My pulse began to race.
Names,
Erwin said. The man swallowed and finally met my eyes.
Your former husband.
The words didn't land at first. No, I said immediately, shaking my head. Erwin turned sharply.
Dinara.
No, I said again, louder. You're wrong. My former husband, Rython, Davian's son. The quiet one, the patient one. The man who spoke gently when his father barked orders, who listened, who asked instead of demanded, who had never raised a hand to me or looked at me like I was owned. He wasn't like his father, I said, the words tumbling out too fast. He hated what Davian did. He didn't want power. He didn't even want the crown. The man on the floor let out a broken laugh.
That's what made them believe him.
My head spun.
He came to Shadowsting as your husband,
The man continued.
as family. He told them he loved you, but that love wasn't enough to save them from the king.
I took a step back, shaking.
He said you were becoming dangerous,
The man said.
that you were tied too closely to the crown, that when war came, and he promised it would, the king would burn Shadowsting to ash as an example.
No, I whispered. He wouldn't. Erwin spoke then, steady and controlled.
He learned from his father and from his grandfather.
He was kind, I said, fury and disbelief tearing through me.
Yes,
Erwin replied quietly.
that was the point.
He wouldn't manipulate my pack,
He didn't.
Erwin said.
He persuaded them.
The distinction hurt more than any accusation ever could,
He didn't threaten them.
Erwin continued.
He made them choose him willingly.
I remembered then the relief in my pack's voices, the way they said, "At least he's not like Davian." The pity in their eyes when they looked at me. I had thought they were afraid. They had been choosing peace, just not with me.
He told them
The man said softly.
that cutting you loose was the only way to survive.
My legs felt weak. Erwin didn't touch me. He didn't need to,
That's why they didn't hesitate.
he said.
They believed they were choosing survival over sentiment.
My chest ached as the truth finally settled.
He didn't betray you loudly.
Erwin finished.
He betrayed you gently.
The room went silent, and in that silence, I understood. Rython hadn't been innocent. He had been worse, because he had made them believe they were doing the right thing. The guards dragged the man away, his words still echoing in my head. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I had survived worse than this. But as the doors closed and silence returned, something inside me shifted, quietly, irrevocably. I had lost my pack once. Now I understood how. And I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. I wasn't going to run from this betrayal. I was going to face it. Erwin did not let me return to my room. He didn't frame it as an order, but it was one all the same. He guided me down the corridor toward the west wing, past the doors I knew, past the places that felt familiar, until we stopped outside his chambers.
It's safer.
He said. I nodded, even though we both knew that wasn't the full truth. He wanted to see me, to understand how deeply this betrayal cut, to know whether I would fracture or harden. And for the first time, I didn't resent that need. Inside his room, the fire was already lit. The space was simple, controlled, nothing excessive. It felt lived in, not ceremonial. A king's room stripped down to what was necessary, strength without indulgence. The door closed behind us. That was when it hit me. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just a slow collapse I couldn't stop. I had trusted Rython, truly trusted him. I had believed that kindness meant innocence, that gentleness meant safety, that because he had never hurt me, he never would. I had been wrong. The tears came without warning, hot and relentless. I covered my face, ashamed of how quickly I broke, but Erwin didn't hesitate. He crossed the space between us and pulled me against him, one arm firm around my back, the other steadying me as I shook. He didn't speak at first. He just held me. I cried harder than I had in years, not quiet tears, not controlled ones. This was grief and humiliation and fury tangled together. It was the pain of realizing I had been fooled not by cruelty, but by care. Erwin's hand moved slowly along my back, grounding, patient, present. And suddenly I understood him. I understood why he had shut down after his father died, why he had built walls instead of bridges, why trust, to him, felt like a loaded blade held too close to the heart. This was the wound he had warned me about. When my tears finally slowed, when my breathing steadied, something inside me shifted. The sadness burned down to something colder. Anger, clear, focused, sharp. I pulled back slightly, lifting my head. I won't run from this, I said hoarsely. Erwin looked at me closely.
I didn't think you would.
I already sent the message, I continued. Before today, before I knew. I swallowed. I asked Rython to meet me at the arena, 6 days from now. Erwin's jaw tightened, not in surprise, but approval.
He'll come,
he said. Yes, I agreed, because he thinks I'm still blind. We planned everything after that, not hurriedly, not recklessly. We talked through every possibility, every exit, every excuse he might use, every lie he might tell. Erwin anticipated them all, not because he knew Rython, but because he knew men like him, men who believed they were righteous. By the time we finished, there was no path left open for escape. If Rython wanted to follow the legacy of his father and grandfather, manipulation dressed as mercy, betrayal masked as protection, then he would face consequences they never had. Real ones. The nights that followed were quiet and tense. Erwin refused to let me leave his chambers until it was over. He didn't apologize for it. He didn't pretend it was only about security. And I didn't argue. Every night, he held me when the memories came back, when the anger flared and burned itself out, when the grief returned softer but heavier. He murmured reassurance when I needed it, steady and low, not empty promises, just presence. He never once treated me like I was fragile. He treated me like someone worth protecting. By the 6th night, I no longer cried. I slept in his arms, calm and resolute. Rythan's reckoning was coming, and this time, I wasn't facing betrayal alone. I was standing beside a king who understood exactly what it cost to trust, and who had chosen to do it anyway. The day of reckoning came, and I stood alone in the arena. The stone beneath my boots was cold. Empty seats rose around me in silent tears, shadows clinging to the edges like they were holding their breath. I had chosen this place deliberately, public enough to matter, isolated enough to control. Rythan arrived exactly when I knew he would. He walked in like he owned the ground beneath him, posture relaxed, expression calm, voice smooth when he spoke my name.
Dinara.
I turned toward him and let my face soften. Let the mask settle into place. Rythan. He smiled and crossed the distance between us, arms opening as if this were a reunion instead of an execution. He pulled me into a hug, warm and familiar, his voice low near my ear.
I've missed you.
I wrapped my arms around him briefly. I've missed you too. That was when his body went still. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his smile never leaving his face, but something sharp flickered behind his eyes.
No, you haven't,
he said calmly. I frowned, confusion carefully measured. What? He sighed, rolling his eyes like I'd disappointed him.
Oh, come on, Dinara. Did you really think I didn't plan for this?
My stomach dropped, but I didn't let it show.
When I sent those men after you,
he continued, circling me slowly.
I knew that if they were caught, they'd say my name. That was the point.
He smirked.
And judging by the fact that Antien isn't back, I'm guessing you already know.
My breath caught for real this time. But, I started. He cut me off.
I'm sure you came here planning to feed me lies. Same way you did my father.
His voice hardened slightly.
So I'd make a move against your precious king.
I stared at him, really looked at him. And then I changed tactics. Why? I asked softly. Why are you doing this to me, Rythan? His mask cracked.
You whore.
He snarled, the words snapping out of him.
You destroyed my family. Do you really think I'd let you walk away untouched?
I met his glare. Your father destroyed my family. He scoffed.
It was war between packs. Your father lost. Accept it.
Then his expression twisted, bitterness seeping through the cracks.
I was going to let you live,
he said.
I really was. But then you divorced me and ran straight to that bastard king.
The last of my restraint burned away. I let him see it, all of it. So you turned my pack against me? I said loudly, my voice carrying across the arena. You lied to them, told them I was corrupt. He laughed.
Oh, yes,
he said easily.
Very simple, really. Simple minds are easy to poison.
He shrugged.
Killed a few people in the pack. Framed it on your king. Fear does the rest.
I laughed then. Loud, uncontrolled. And that was when he knew. His smile faltered.
What?
The walls of the arena shifted. Doors I had watched sealed for years swung open. Members of Shadow Sting poured out from hidden corridors, faces twisted with fury, eyes locked on Rythan. Every word he'd spoken echoed back at him now. They had heard everything. I turned back to him, letting the smugness show. Thank you, I said sweetly. You made that easier than expected. Fear flashed across his face, then rage.
You whore,
he shouted, lunging for me. The arrow hit him before he could take a second step. It tore through his arm, pinning him to the stone. He screamed, collapsing to the ground. I sighed and glanced toward the stands. Looks like my precious king doesn't like anyone touching his weapon. More figures emerged. My former pack surrounded him, some shouting his name in disbelief, others cursing him, grief and rage colliding violently in the open air. This had always been the plan. We had known Rythan would brag. Men like him always did. And Erwin had made sure Shadowsting would be here to hear it. Rythan writhed on the stone, blood pooling beneath him, screaming now. Not in rage, but terror. Rythan was taken away in chains. His punishment was swift and public, stripped of rank, stripped of name, stripped of any claim he had ever thought himself entitled to. I did not watch. I didn't need to. Justice no longer required my presence to feel real. When the gates of the arena finally closed behind him, the silence didn't last. The crowd turned toward me as one. They bowed.
"Long live the Luna!"
Someone shouted. Then another, and another. The chant spread through the stands, growing louder, heavier, until it pressed against my chest like a weight I refused to carry. I raised my hand. The sound died instantly. I lifted my head and met their eyes, every single one of them, and I did not soften my voice. "I am not your Luna." Shock rippled through them. "You have betrayed me repeatedly," I continued, anger sharp and controlled. "When my father was accused of breaking the treaty, no one stood beside him. When I told you I suspected foul play in my parents' deaths, you ignored me. When lies were spread about me, you believed them without question." I paused, letting it sink in. "You did not act as a pack. You acted out of fear and convenience." Faces lowered, some stiffened, others looked ashamed. "For that reason," I said, steady now, "Shadowsting will be dissolved." A murmur swept the arena. "The pack bond is hereby severed," I declared. "Only blood families and legally adopted children will remain together. All others will be scattered and redistributed among allied packs, as is lawful for a pack that has broken its oaths." I braced for outrage, for shouting, for defiance. It never came. Instead, an elder stepped forward slowly and bowed his head.
"We accept your judgment,"
he said.
"We failed you. We failed your parents. We failed the meaning of pack itself.
He swallowed.
Thank you for your mercy."
Applause followed, not celebration, acceptance. I looked at them then, at the people I had once called family, who had chosen peace over loyalty, fear over truth. I felt no hatred, only distance. Then I turned away. Erwin stood behind me, flanked by Mona and Sina. They hadn't moved, hadn't needed to. He had left his defenses, his counsel, his throne. For me, a king who struggled to trust. And yet, when it mattered, he had chosen to. I understood then what pack truly meant. It wasn't blood. It wasn't fear. It was who stood when standing cost something. I stepped toward them, toward my new pack, toward my alpha, and I did not look back. The end.